Hi FilmChat's friends! Today, let's review Cirque, a movie by John Hyams.
The film takes place in early 2020, back when quarantine restrictions were in effect, and people all across the US were panic buying toilet paper. A young man named Tyler is out shopping at a grocery store when he gets a series of texts from an unknown number asking him to hang out. Finding this weird, he says no. But not long after, gets sent a picture of him waiting in line at the grocery store, but Tyler couldn't make out who took the picture. When he returns to his car, the unknown number calls him, so he picks up and tells the caller to screw himself. Afterwards, Tyler returns home, still practicing social distance, avoiding the person sitting on the steps. He gets in the apartment and starts taking out his groceries, right when he notices his apartment door wide open and the hall lights blinking. And then the TV suddenly turns on. And when he turns it off, a hooded figure with a knife suddenly appears and attacks Tyler from behind. Help somebody. He fights for his life and retreats to the bedroom, while the attacker tries kicking his way in. And so Tyler blocks the door with a desk, until the attacker stops. When the coast is clear, the man arms himself with a baseball bat. Instead of calling 911, he then exits the room in an attempt to find the attacker, only to have the attacker ambush him from behind and slit his throat, ultimately killing him. The next scene introduces us to two friends, Mary and Parker, who are headed for Parker's lake house for quarantine. Before they go, Parker takes a selfie, which she posts on social media, announcing that she is on her way to her family's lake house. They drive out of the city until they arrive at a fancy, remote cabin that they get to have to themselves. As they settle in and clean the groceries, Parker receives a text from an unknown number and dismissively asks who the texter is. Hours later, the two friends are out sunbathing at the dock when Parker yet again receives a text message telling her to jump in the lake because the water's fine. This, of course, weirds her out, so she informs Mary about the text before blocking the number, which is a very strange decision. Later that day, Parker finds one of the cabin doors open, but nobody was there. She finds this curious, but doesn't want to overthink it for now. So she goes to close it. At night, when the two are hanging out and watching the covered news in the living room, they could hear rumbling noises outside and see someone outside when they peer out the window. Scared, Mary takes a kitchen knife to arm herself, just before they suddenly hear the doorbell ring. Parker tries asking who's out there, but the unknown guest only responds by knocking impatiently and ringing the doorbell again. And so Parker takes the knife from Mary's hand and slowly opens the door, only to find there's no one outside. She shouts for whoever it is to show themselves, but hears no answer. Unbeknownst to them, a figure walks up behind Mary and reveals himself to be DJ, Parker's fling, who came to the lake house uninvited. He claims to have come all this way to surprise Parker because he missed her, though reluctant, because they're worried about catching COVID. The two agree to let him stay. Later that night, Parker and DJ are already cozying up by a bonfire, while Mary still socially distances herself from DJ. After smoking a joint each, they head to the dance floor in the basement and dance the night away until they grow tired. The three end up sharing stories in the living room. After Mary excuses herself to go to bed, Parker and DJ argue about him showing up unannounced because Parker wanted a break from him. As a response, DJ stops beating around the bush and confronts Parker about a video she posted to Instagram wherein she's kissing a college friend of hers named Benji. Parker reasons that she and DJ were never exclusive and therefore she should be free to hook up with anyone. But DJ thinks that there's something more to their connection and wants Parker to admit it. Sadly, Parker rejects him and retreats into the house. But as DJ goes back into the house too, we see a hooded figure lurks in the dark. On the other side of the house, Parker finds Mary to tell her about the heavy conversation she just had with DJ. As the two friends converse, the hooded figure stands at the end of the hall watching. After Parker wishes Mary good night, she heads to her room while the hooded figure swiftly sneaks behind her. She goes to bed, and moments later, the hooded figure approaches her and takes Parker's phone. Down in the living room, DJ awakes from his sleep and is unable to find his phone, so he goes searching for it. But all of a sudden, Really loud music starts blasting through the speakers, waking Parker from her sleep. She tries reaching for her phone too, but it's gone from the nightstand. Confused and annoyed, she exits her room to ask DJ to turn the music off, but then DJ shuts her mouth and frantically tells her that there's an intruder. They both now learn that their phones are missing and come up with a plan. He hands Parker his car keys and tells her to start the car while he goes to get married. Parker swiftly climbs out of the house and starts running along the driveway until she sees the hooded figure standing in Mary's room and screams just as the figure goes to stab her friend. Luckily, DJ gets there in time. He holds off the attacker while telling Mary to go and proceeds to fight for his life. It takes him a while to defend himself from getting stabbed. He then runs down the hall to the living room and knocks down the attacker with a stuffed stag's head. Unfortunately, the attacker stabs DJ in the thigh and starts to wildly swing his knife, while Parker and Mary anxiously wait for him in the car. The attacker starts stabbing DJ repeatedly while he reaches for the door. When the door opens and DJ shuffles outside, Parker leaves the car to investigate. But she soon realizes that DJ's feet are not touching the ground, and it turns out that the intruder is holding DJ up with a stick that is pierced in his back. The intruder proceeds to kill him, while Parker screams and returns inside the car before driving away, unaware that the car tire has been slashed. As a result, they crash into a ditch and gets the car stuck. The attacker is already outside the car. He throws a brick to shadow the window, prompting Parker and Mary to run for their lives, while the attacker chases them. They manage to retreat inside the house and lock themselves in the attic. The attic window wouldn't budge, no matter how hard the two tried to push it open. Soon enough, the attacker starts banging on the attic door, forcing Mary to hold it shut with her entire weight. However, the attacker is stronger. He manages to tear the door open, and so Parker comes at him and kicks him down the stairs. Up next, Parker throws a heavy box against the window, breaking it and allowing them to escape through the roof, while the two make their way across. The attacker suddenly reaches through a small window on the wall and pushes Mary down, causing her to fall. Not wasting any time, Parker makes it back inside the house and attempts to see if Mary is okay, but the attacker blocks her path. Thus she heads to the kitchen, and she bashes a drawer against him. Parker proceeds to throw plates at him and hits him until he falls to the floor. She finishes him off by repeatedly bashing his head. Parker thinks it's all over, but it's not. Another person, an identical getup, shows up at the door, walks up to his dead friend, and proceeds to cry in agony. While he grieves, Parker runs out of the house again and finds out that Mary is still alive. Mary is injured, so Parker quickly tells her that there are two attackers and tells Mary to play dead for the time being, while Parker hides. Once the attacker steps out, the first thing he does is to check on Mary to make sure she's dead, while Parker watches behind a tree. To distract him, she throws a rock across the yard, attracting his attention to go check it out when he notices Parker's hiding spot. Parker opts to start running towards the lake. The killer catches up to her, but the girl manages to hit him with an oar, and then she detaches a floating dock. She starts rowing herself away, while the attacker watches from the dock. Meanwhile, back in the yard, Mary has forced herself to get up and has struggled her way into the house with a broken leg back to Parker. She keeps rowing in the dark until suddenly, the attacker ambushes her from underwater by snatching her oar. Even though she literally has the high ground, she is afraid, even more so when the attacker starts stabbing through the boat she's on. He eventually stabs her in the palm before climbing up the plank. This forces Parker to jump into the water and swims ashore. At the same time, Mary breaks a chair and uses it to prop up her broken leg. Soon after, Parker arrives in front of her neighbor's cabin and starts pounding on the door, but hears no answer. Therefore, she pries the window open by force and slides in, right before the attacker runs into the scene. Parker moves to another room in the small cabin and gets ambushed by the owner, holding a shotgun. The man doesn't remember Parker and threatens to shoot, but she reminds him that she's friends with his daughter, and he softens. Unfortunately, the attacker appears from behind and slits his throat out of nowhere and picks up his shotgun. He shoots through the door, while Parker runs outside again. Back to Mary. She has successfully created a makeshift leg brace with saran wrap and chair legs. She's in the middle of putting finishing touches to it right when the other attacker, who we thought was dead, comes back to life. She crawls across the floor to reach for a kitchen knife and stabs him in the neck. And let's hope he's dead for good now. Meanwhile, Parker runs and hides behind a fallen tree bark in the woods while the attacker looks for her with a knife in hand. She waits until coast is clear and comes out of hiding. But unfortunately, yet again he attacks her and tries stabbing her. While a car starts approaching them in the background, she manages to knock him down with a log and runs towards the car. But the driver, whose name is Pamela, tells her she can't let her in if she doesn't have a mask, while Parker begs to be let in, and Pamela hands her a mask to wear. The attacker rises and starts walking towards the car. Luckily, she makes it inside before he gets to her. But then things take a turn when she soon finds herself drowsy, as the mask is actually laced with chloroform. We now return to Mary, who later on is confused to find a car pulling up at the driveway. She hides and watches. Pamela steps out of the car, followed by the attacker, carrying in unconscious Parker. They enter the house and lay Parker down on the couch, while Mary hides behind the kitchen counter. Up next, the two perform a swab test on Parker, which wakes her up. While they wait for the test results, they embrace each other to mourn for the dead attacker, who turns out to be their son, and approach Parker to do an intervention. Here they reveal that Benji, the boy Parker was seen kissing on Instagram, is their younger son, who died 3 days ago from COVID-19. They suspect that Parker infected him at the party, as her COVID-19 test reveals that she is positive, and they wish to avenge him by killing her. The father, whose name is Jason, also reads out all of the anti-COVID related hashtags that Parker left in the video post. To add, they confess to the murder of Tyler, the man we saw at the beginning of the movie, as he was the one who infected Parker. While this conversation takes place, Mary crawls towards her laptop and tries messaging 911 to inform an emergency. But it doesn't get delivered, so she tries texting her dad. Unfortunately, Jason takes notice that the Wi-Fi router is blinking, meaning someone is using it. Realizing that this probably means Mary is alive, Jason heads outside to check if Mary's body is still there. While the man is out in the yard, Mary takes the opportunity to sneak behind Pamela and hits her head with a glass bottle before pushing her out of the window. Drawn by the loud noise, Jason returns to look for the girls. He slowly goes upstairs to look for the two, and just in time, Mary saws his leg with an electric carving knife, while Parker pushes him down the balcony, where he gets impaled by the stuffed antlers and dies. Now safe and sound, Parker and Mary head to the shed across the house and climb into Parker's old dune buggy. Mary twists the ignition, but the buggy won't start because it's out of fuel, and so Parker tries to refill it. But suddenly, Pamela comes running with a hatchet. Luckily, it misses Parker and hits the fuel container instead. She continues to try attacking Parker, so Parker douses her with gasoline. In the middle of their scuffle, the mother pins Parker to the workbench, while Mary crawls on the floor to save her friend. But when Parker manages to fight back, Mary picks up a lighter and sets Pamela on fire, causing her to start running away to the streets, while she burns to death. The movie ends with the two friends walking side by side, out of the shed and down the street. As usual, the cops show up late to the party,